closure has different forms within ourselves. For me, if I can't identify, if the government can't identify, or the people responsible can't identify that this is Ibulo's body and he's going to be buried here, there's no closure for me.
This is WAVE, Women's Association for Victims Empowerment. I'm Zainab Lobalde, representing the organization. So we have started the process of documenting closure for the victims of enforced disappearances in the Gambia. A brief background about what is going on. The Gambia is going through a transition from a dictatorship to a democratic state. In 2017, the Gambia established a TRRC process where some of the victims have reported or had given cases of their family members being missing by the junta government, which was in the Gambia from 1994 to 2017. During the TRRC's hearing, we were able to unearth a lot of truth about the whereabouts of some of these victims who a group of junglers have reportedly been tasked to execute them.
And for those instances, those two instances you mentioned, what was the purpose of putting the bodies in a well?
ñaari yoon yi nga mujjee wax noonu lanay woon lana taxoon ngeen jël niw yooyu dem sànni leen ci teen.
xanaa loolu mag yi de xam ne waa man si suma gis-gis mooy réeral leen rek.
I don't. Maybe our leaders would know, but so far as I can tell, it was just to make them disappear.
So essentially, you were covering up the act of the killing.
mu ngi mel ni léegi yéen a ngeen nuba liggéey bi ngeen def noonu ni ngeen réyee gars yi ba pare di sànni nit ñi ci teen yéen a ngeen nuba liggéey li ngeen def.
mooy dëgg xañ na boobu ndigal la suñ njiiti am.
That's the truth. Probably that was the order that our leaders got.
I welcome all of you to Yundum Barracks. I am the team leader here. And I am Superintendent Thomas R.J. Gomez. Yes, and so far this is what we have recovered. After being here for almost 2 weeks, these are the remains of the deceased persons that we have recovered. We started from somewhere there behind. I went right to that other end there and dug for a depth of about 2 meters. And we haven't seen anything around that end. Those are the areas that the witnesses said. But we know when it comes to identification of graves, witness testimonies rarely help. Day before yesterday, we came around this end. And these are the remains that we have recovered. So I'll take time to give you a rundown of all that we have here.
TRRC bi tamit bi ñu ñëwee di same thing seet nañ waaye gisuñ dara léegi nag ñun ñu ngi ñaan ñun famille bi mooy ne jullit lañ te bépp jullit su génne àdduna warugalam mooy ñu sang ko jullee ko jébbal ko boromam ñun daal loolu lañ doon ñaan nguur gi ñu gën ñu seet dimbale taxawuñu bu ko defee ñu jéem ñoo relocatal ñooñu seen dead body fan lañ nekk suñ si mënee jot ñu mun leen a sang jullee leen jébbal leen seen borom.
soo buñ déggee si TRRC bi ne dañ ko téye si leen dem si hearing bi ñu dégg everything ak loolu ñu am léegi comme nii lam fa demee waaye gisuñ ni woon ba tey xamuñ fuñ ko suul dégg naa ñu ne xama tànji la waaye mënuñoo wax ne kii la wala kay la te dégg naa buñ ko doon suul gars yi sanguñ ko comme muslim gars yi mbuba yu sol sax noonu ko suulee te moom muslim la deserve na pour am ne like suuli muslim deserve na pour njabootam tamit dijal ko ba tey sax mënuñ koo dijal ko xamuñ gisuñ ne mu ngi nii wala mu ngi nele du xam nañ ne dee na de waaye xamuñ ne comme Ndour Cham ni woon mu ngi nii
bare ñing ko laya nafata drong aka nte ay kundi mol fo dinna jang man tara fekkere mbaka wo nyam bare bitundum me dani rokela le Minister of Justice and National Human Rights and Masakunda isi makoy comme ko dol min ya lon ko nyanta ka tama nyame super islamic kan sun min ben na alfal min be jante ka kol bonye nyoto na organisational min bako wif jang bare be la fere wasifa lela ka kol boy nyoto saja si tol farana do ko sone yande foka parentol fanan salom bita nyaadile kato nelo nal nyininka karanal ni nyininka jani be kukela aka bete yala
disappear be legi it's almost about going to 15 or 18 years something like that ko confirm ki tiara ci wene dañ ko re moy oya diallo moko confirm ki lañ xamne degantan dañ ko rey so what we will need is I know it will be difficult waaye bu ñu xamoon fan lañ ko suulee ñu xam nan la même bu fekkee ne sax mënuñ koo jot waaye tamit ñu xam exactly lan moo tax ñu koy rey ak lan la def wala lan la wax so it's important to the family we cannot really forget about this honestly waaye liñ bëgg mooy government should do something about this at least justice should be done
mbele fere mena don natara yi idla ile position no long e wuri e dintro fanana nga bade o ke ngi bade islam sura taala nyame bare men fon wurta fan imam hanbi me sotono ila bade ngol me sotono pour ka e bade o ke islam sura bade o men amanke no ansa ni ko ya warta bala fa watanka wallahi be mira kam mbele fere masa kundal nga dane ay lon fi ay mako ya ngana forol sotono mfane duwe fon fana nil sitenkun la ko wala wato ni ya mira do ini reka ko ya do wato bini ba ko ya do
tara si fana na lo kono nte fa ko ni wona ta taje ka testify hani bi nte ke mala ko wontol man fellonje hani bi ntol be tama kan di bolo kono adu adimo wuluta wodi bolo kono abe balu ko wodi bolo kono bayre ni fama fata ilota kunto be danila ise makoy nganna justice toto anin na jusu nyaburan
ka ken na semboliti wala tin nan dewta dawo dan kata wolle to nganna nyin haajo lidanteji nganna kuma kan wala sata je wala sentande duniya la isa sata bari mbe dewrin ne de mbe dewrin baake mbe jakallin bayri ila mo ni ya muta ya samba imaje koteke fo janne ila yawmidin ani ku ya warata asuno warata abala fa warata man sakunda nyanta miral kala nyinna baake ila moy yema imaje abala fa warata ani ku ya warata mbuka lafika nyinse nkan mbuka lafika afo bari mbesula rimunela mbesula rin kitiyo ani mbesula riminela na buluma seo isa fonyi nyanta minekela
trying to ensure the remains of the victims of enforced disappearance and extrajudicial killing. Quite a number of remains were retrieved, but some of them are still lying at the mortuary and they are yet to be identified. That is also a challenge and a problem because it creates it traumatizes the relatives and as such, it reminds them of their loved ones. So for me, and as an institution, I think these are areas that we really want MOJ through government to ensure that I know they don't have the capacity, and I was made to understand is one who has the forensic capacity knowledge in terms of identifying remains. But what we do want to emphasize with government is to ensure that they provide the necessary support to victims and ensure that where victims were buried, we try to exhume them and ensure that the remains, they do a DNA to show who are their relatives, so that they can also be given a fitting burial. I think these are all issues that needs to be addressed, and these are issues that the Victim Center has always been in the forefront in discussing with the Ministry of Justice in ensuring that the remains are identified and then given a fitting burial.
For enforced disappearance is really finding the remains and getting the evidence is very important in the quest for justice. Finding the remains of the disappeared is not just about closure for the family members, but also evidence supporting prosecutions that will be taking place. So the longer it takes, the longer it can be a challenge for the families for closure as well as justice. So really, our recommendation to the ministry and the government, Gambia government, is to really step up on their search for our loved ones and make it a priority, in the sense that time really can make a big impact in finding the location where they're buried and subsequently finding the remains and identifying the remains of our loved ones, and again hopefully getting enough evidence that would support our cases in the prosecution process for justice to be done, and for justice to be done as quickly as possible without delay.
Our dead body, we didn't know where his body is. We didn't even know where the time they killed him, where they where they left the body, we didn't even know. So, what she say, you can you can hear something, you can hear that your dad is dead, you didn't see the body. It's like, sometimes I used to sit alone. I said, no, this is just a story to me. How can people say that your dad is dead, you didn't see the body, you didn't even see where the body is? So it's so sad. Yeah, it's so sad.
What closure means to me is like what Ami says and this one. How can someone be killed while you don't know where the body is? Or you don't know where they killed the body, or where he was kept, or where he was tortured? So we need help from the government to do their research. If we have the time to go, for them to show us the people that were responsible for the death of our loved ones, and to show us where they buried them, so that we can have a perfect burial for them, each and every one of our loved ones.
We don't know where the body of our father is, whether it's in the Gambia or in the Casamance. We don't know. I know that it's going to be impossible for us to see the body, but we want the government to do their research and point out fingers. These are the people, or those are the people who are responsible for the disappearance of your dad. Or even we cannot get that, we need a compensation from the government, as we are facing many difficulties still in Fonyi. So if we can have a compensation from the government to help us move from the Fonyis to the Combos, will be best for me.
2017 sangokono 27 of February woluneng fama tata borderline oto kata je 40 days ola biri wolungo fobi amamurunang nga report di mansakundala la pour investigation o ka kola e make nata data ka futa bunda jamal tata Ministry of Justice ndata NHRC bar hanikabi mansakunda man fem foje for recently malagani investigation o ka ko nyina nata fo moli menketa ala wala iko rebelo le amuta ya riba fo anata na fo aniola olungala. So amo process le mi alon ko akoliata bakele bawo ka keba ya wulula koma akoliata le ante ba ma yedin kononto le soto nandi ma yedin fula soto keta motang anin kili kataraje ba mal be lori dingol la kola akoliyata bake wasunta ntela dalilo la mbota grade 12 doron manna na continue karamu la bawondo ko mal fana mbejel miliyalon ko nanta continue la kata karangola aketa ku ko yarim bake family kan adiminta bake malon yela mo fata nyamen no han yalon fang ema adila ni sa bader kendo diala so o keta kutile bake mi yalon ko akoliyata ndo la dimbayal kan no hani kabin na koliyabe sini bawon sal woni dino doron walen ka kan na wululata nga bade ananta bade la nyame.
What does closure mean? It's such a difficult question, and all your answers are getting us a lot closer. But of course, there are different levels of closure. You know, you have the closure for you, like in your grieving, in your mourning, but also closure for your parents that has not had that ending, really. There's no real final ceremony there.
We know some of them were working in government and they have served the nation in different levels or different capacities, and they've disappeared. But the relatives needs to be given their dues. Somebody who has worked for 5 or 10 or 15 years obviously needs to get his or her gratuity, and that is still remaining. And I think Minister of Justice should also redouble their efforts in ensuring that the relatives gets the entitlement of those victims that disappeared and their relatives cannot trace them. And I think that is, well, it's something that they own. It's something that they worked for. So the relatives should get those things to them. And I think it's proving difficult because some of them don't have certification in terms of death certificate, because one of the key things is if a person dies, the person is given a death certificate, and you can use the death certificate to prove yourself that this individual is missing and has eventually died.
The challenges that we really are pushing to address are the finding and identifying the disappeared. There's been an exhumation back in 2019 that was ordered by the Truth Commission at the time, the TRRC, and that exhumation, it is believed that 7 remains were exhumed, and the remains are still sitting at the mortuary from 1994. So the biggest challenge has been in identifying those remains and finding the burial sites of those that are those other scores of people who remain to be whose burial sites are yet to be located, and whose remains are yet to be found and given back to their loved one. That's been the biggest challenge. Since the exhumation back in 2019, there's not been much done by the government to address the issue of finding the burial sites. The TRRC, towards the tail end, did embark on a couple of missions to locate some additional sites when they were not successful. However, since then, there has not been any effort that has been done. And as time goes, we are very concerned because the terrain where they are buried will change due to natural development. The trees will grow, the soil will change, farming activities are going on, development activities like road constructions and electricity, grid setups are going on, and there's a likelihood that these could, if they fall on they are around burial sites, they could be affected and would really increase the work that has to be done to find to identify the locations, and also really decrease the chances of proper identification. The worst case scenario would be giving the wrong remains to the wrong family, giving the remains to the wrong family and having to discover that years on later. So really that has been the biggest concern for us, the families, and of course the closure, really knowing that your loved one has been found, even if it is a single bone, and doing our cultural and the religious rites that we generally do as human beings to find closure when a loved one has departed.